Okay, I know what you're thinking. This is super late. It's at least 3, almost 4 weeks late, I think. But better late than never, I say. So this is my review of the two-part finale of Star Wars The Bad Batch. Starting off with Episode 15, Return to Kamino. So do you remember back when I called it that this season would end in Kamino? Hunter promised Omega that she'd never have to come back, and I said, yeah, that probably means she's coming back here by season's end. Isn't it crazy that we had to wait for the season finale to finally get their confrontation? It shows how much filler's in this show. I absolutely adore that they're using the Attack of the Clones Kamino theme music here. And they use it again in the last episode. The prequels may be very divisive, but the one thing that basically everyone agrees on is that John Williams made an absolutely impeccable score for those films. You can appreciate them on their own and listen to them as their own thing. You don't need to watch the films to appreciate it. Yes, thank you, Tech, for spelling out what we knew already, that the Empire obviously is luring them into a trap. This show has a problem with having almost no subtlety. Echo is rightfully wary about where the rest of the fleet is, and Wrecker's just like, who cares? Dude, it's kind of important to know that, no? What's the point of a landing pad structure that's motion activated that only appears when you get close to it? Seems really dangerous. Especially on Kamino. If something malfunctions, your ship is going in the drink. And radar scramblers are a thing in Star Wars, so why can't they just hide the structure signal from radar somehow? And how does Omega know about this? We find out later that this is the lab that she was made in, but that doesn't mean she comes out here and sees this section of it, since she's never left. Again, how does she know how to do this? She undoubtedly was never allowed to come over here, and never needed to, as far as we know. I know this is sci-fi, fantasy and all, but serious question. How did they build all this while constant raging storms are happening? Wouldn't all their tools and equipment get jostled around and swept away in the waves? Here, Omega explains that this tunnel leads to Nala Se's private research lab, but that still doesn't explain how she knew that platform they landed on leads to that. She was created there. As far as we know, she hadn't left before and wouldn't have known about that landing pad. Crosshair implies here that he didn't have a choice to kill them, but of course later with the big reveal, we found out, oh yeah, he actually did. Omega reveals to them that they were all created here in this room, but again, why does she know this information and they don't? So she's older than them, right? How and why? And they don't seem confused that much when she says she was here when they were made. I'd be asking tons of questions. Why is he surprised Crosshair is here? This is his base, and they know Hunter is captured. Of course he'd be here. All of these conversations between Hunter and Crosshair about their differing worldviews and conflicting ideologies are great. It's a shame we didn't get more of this and less of everything else. All the side missions, like wrangling a Rancor. Too much filler. I guess this is sort of a little nitpick, but why is the classic Death Star klaxon alarm used on Kamino? I get that the Republic commissioned Kamino to make clones, but Tipoca City wasn't built by the Republic. Surely they should have their own weird Kaminoan alarm system. Does the Empire just bring like a boombox around wherever they go to play that sound wherever they need to? I don't know, it's just a world-building nitpick. Wow, that's convenient that when the Bad Batch gets cornered by Crosshair, Omega just happens to be in the room where she can enable the Dark Troopers. But also she risks getting them killed by doing this. This is probably the best part of the episode where Crosshair says the Bad Batch weren't loyal to him and how he's going to give them a chance. So it turned out that he brought them all here to team up with them and take out a bunch of the other rogue clones under the Empire's control. Then he has his "join me and we shall rule the galaxy" moment, and proves to the other members of the Bad Batch that he can be trusted by pointing his gun at the other clones. It's honestly the most interesting stuff in the show, and I wish it wasn't just relegated to the premiere, the mid-season, and the finale. A lot of shows seem to do that. The beginning, the end, and the middle are all important and everything else is filler. If you're going to do that, don't have it be 16 episodes long. Trim the fat. Then he does one of his crazy Crosshair trick shots and takes out all the guys with one shot. I'm not going to say that isn't cool. Then the show comes full circle when the Dark Troopers come online, and it's like a callback to the start of the season, where they fight the Dark Troopers together to show Tarkin what they can do. This was the big reveal that Crosshair actually had his chip removed a long time ago. I speculated a while back about maybe this was the real him and the chip was gone. It was a good scene nonetheless, even though I predicted it. Then the remaining Imperial presence yeets themselves off the planet, and this is where I suspect they are going to do what I thought they would do since the beginning of the season, which is blow this place to kingdom come. Tarkin does his "fire when ready" line from A New Hope, and I knew immediately, yep, it's over for Tipoca City. I called it. This next scene where they open fire on Kamino has some incredible and haunting imagery. Empty barracks and mess halls, the Venators in a stormy sky, cloaked in darkness and occasionally visible with lightning, and then the command by Rampart to open fire and the music. Ugh! Kevin Kiner absolutely nails it here. One of his best, somber, dark tracks he's ever done. It really brings it all together and it's honestly goosebump-inducing. Seriously though, it's kind of sad because This scene feels like it's the end of an era. Kamino has been a staple in Star Wars since 2002, and many of us in my generation grew up seeing it in many forms of media over the years, starting with Attack of the Clones and then the Clone Wars series, various video games. Lots of memories here. Of course, I'm immediately reminded of watching the Obi-Wan versus Jango scene in the rain back in the theater in grade school. Seeing it be blown to smithereens was way more emotional and affecting than I thought it would be. It was like seeing a piece of my childhood be blown up and all I could do was watch helplessly. That also happens to be a good allegory for a lot of film franchises these days that are sold on nostalgia and completely ruined. And that's credits on that episode. Man, what an effective ending to one of the best episodes yet. Maybe the best one. It's definitely in like the top 3 or 4 of the season. And then we come to the finale, episode 16, Kamino Lost. So, I mean, Kamino is a big place. Only Tipoca City was lost, really. Unless this is like the only city on the planet, which is doubtful. Sheesh. The Empire sure is efficient at destruction. These Venator gunners have like taped the triggers down. They are relentless in their volley of fire. Why does this clone say the cities, plural, have been destroyed? I just said that Tipoca City is probably not the only city, but, I mean, we haven't seen any other ones. Wasn't this just Tipoca City that was destroyed? Are there other cities nearby that I'm not aware of? Maybe something from the EU? Why on earth does Hunter think Tech could open the door? Did he not just hear and feel the volley of Venator fire raining down? There's very little chance things like door mechanisms are still working. The electricity is out in most places in the city. This seems incredibly dumb. To cut through the door to a room that's currently filling with water? That knife can cut through basically anything, so why not cut up into the ceiling or any other place that's higher than the rapidly rising water level? Find a duct or something high up that leads to that room. Tech can scan everything, can't he? Just like x-ray the room or something. Okay, water is really strong. I don't think even Wrecker could have closed that door after they came through. Man, they are extremely lucky that some of these tubes that lead to exits remained intact. After a bombardment like that, it's a miracle any are still functioning. Especially underwater, since things like that probably break a lot easier under those conditions. I like the little detail of AZ yelling, "Omega, watch out!" when he comes back online, because that's the last thing he was saying before he shut off. That's what 3PO did on Cloud City. Remember the whole, "Oh no, I've been shot." Did Tech just say they're on the ocean floor? Bro, how deep is Kamino's oceans? Or how shallow? Shouldn't they be crushed to death from pressure? They're in pieces of a building that no longer work. There's likely no internal pressure in this room to equalize with the outside pressure, so they'd be crushed like cans. Unless somehow there's still backup power in the section keeping the internal pressure up? Wow, that's a little contrived. Their old room survived the aerial bombardment so they could have this little dialogue with Crosshair and reminisce about the good old days of all of them working together. Talk about a deus ex machina. Hunter and Crosshair were squabbling about what leadership should look like, then Omega interrupts with, "Look, we landed on the underwater tunnel." That is extremely contrived. To be honest, I'm kinda on Crosshair's side here. He's like, she's calling the shots now? Yeah, good point. Hunter is the leader and he keeps following the lead of a child for no apparent reason. Wait, what? AZ has a built-in welder? Where was that when Omega was about to drown? Why didn't he whip that thing out and cut the door instead of waiting for the others to cut open the door with a knife? Did the writers already forget about that scene? I would really like to know just how deep Kamino's oceans are. Somehow glass is perfectly fine under here for potentially decades, but suddenly now it's cracking when they're walking past it. Tech tells Crosshair here, "Understanding you does not mean that I agree with you." Wow, that's surprising. Some actual nuance from this show for once. I mean, it's not much, but it's more than this show and the Clone Wars usually has. And coming from modern-day Disney is even more surprising. And just like that, we're back to the show telling us super obvious things like we're children. Omega says, "This doesn't look very safe." No, you think? This is a cool shot of the sea monster attacking, but I'm left confused by what was just said. Omega sees this creature and asks AZ, "These tunnels are protected, right?" And AZ replies, "Only when the power was on." Huh? What does that even mean? How does the power being on protect you from this sea monster? Does the power somehow make this glass stronger? Does it make the tunnels invisible to sea creatures? What do they mean by protected? It's very vague. They just wanted their sea monster seen, no matter if it makes sense. Okay, show. You really want me to believe that this tunnel still has power left after that bombardment? Alright. I can't tell for sure, but that looks like one of the 3 sea monsters from Phantom Menace. If not, it's probably based on unused concept art for that sequence since they reuse concepts a lot. Huh? That's what he meant by protection? It bites it, electrocutes itself, and shuts all the power off. Seems incredibly inconvenient for the people who have to maintain this place. You couldn't come up with something that doesn't short out your power? Hey, for once they have something that doesn't magically fall into place for them. Actual consequences from the aerial bombardment. The only way to the Marauder is destroyed. He just said, this is what happens when you let a kid call the shots. I mean, once again, I can't say I disagree with him there. Here's where Crosshair says, the Empire will rule the galaxy and I will be a part of it, and Hunter claps back with the correct response, which is, all you'll be to them is a number. He's right. A lot of the quote-unquote revolutionaries on Twitter, Reddit, YouTube, all over the internet, who are mostly just LARPers, need to hear that and get it through their thick skulls. People always think that they will be part of the elite and they'll be in charge when a revolution comes, but it never turns out that way. We have centuries of history showing it never turns out that way. You'll always end up being lined up against the wall, and others will be in charge of you. Kind of a based scene, especially considering this is Disney, and we know their target demographic and which countries they market to. I chuckled at Crosshair's "go away" line here because it perfectly embodies a lot of the fans' thoughts on this show and Omega. I have so many questions about this insane escape plan. First of all, where did they get like a dozen remote explosives? Also, surely the shockwave from the blast or the water rushing in would have broken those tanks they're in. Man, all the glass in Star Wars must be extremely durable according to this episode. This whole thing definitely feels like they wrote themselves into a corner and had to come up with anything to have our characters survive this. It seems suicidal to try and let natural buoyancy of these tanks float them to the surface and somehow manage to avoid all the obstacles. And they want AZ to guide them all, but if they all get really far apart, he can't help all of them. Man, this was almost a poignant and emotional scene. I actually felt kind of sad for AZ. He used his last bit of power rescuing Omega and was willing to sacrifice himself to do it. If the scene ended right here, I would have loved it. There's a lot of good robots in various media like films and games who sacrifice themselves after spending so much time with them, and it works as a story beat, but they immediately undercut his sacrifice in the next moment. Ugh, this scene. This was so frustrating to watch. You just were saved by AZ's sacrifice, and the odds of this plan working at all were slim to none, and you just threw that away by idiotically getting out of the pod to save him. Come on, I get it, you knew each other, but he's a droid. His job is to serve humans. This might be Omega's most brain-dead decision in this whole season. She lost AZ, but almost gets herself killed too. Also, the bends are a thing? How is she not dead from the sudden pressure of getting out of that tank? She at least would have passed out. Maybe clones can do better underwater, I don't know. I do like this part, though, where Crosshair uses his weird grapple hook from his rifle, which I still don't know how it works, to retrieve them. Although I don't think that's how physics work. I don't think you can fire a grapple hook into water and have it travel that far. But I guess Omega's stupidity did give us this little redemptive moment for Crosshair. That's something. This is a pretty affecting moment, too, where they're just looking on at the smoldering ruins of what's left of Tipoca City. The score here is great, too. Sounds like it's incorporating the old theme used for the clones in the Clone Wars. Also, Omega's line here where she says, "It's all gone." That, right there, that's how the OG fans felt after the Rise of Skywalker credits rolled. Wow. Another pearl of wisdom from Hunter. Here he tells Crosshair, "We want different things. That doesn't mean we have to be enemies." Man, that line feels directed at society in 2021. A lot of people these days need to take that to heart. So many people think you can't be friends with someone if they believe something different than you or they want something you don't want. It's like he's talking to the split Star Wars fan base that fractured after The Last Jedi. It's like Filoni is saying directly to us, "Calm down, guys. You can still be civil to each other even if you don't like the movies others do." So this last shot of this finale is kind of interesting. Apparently this place is called Mount Tantus, which is a place from the EU. It's the place that Palpatine created Luke Skywalker, LW, or 2 U's, KE Skywalker, using his severed hand that he finds. So the implications of the scene are interesting, to say the least. The last line is this lady telling Nala Se, "The Empire has future use for you," or something like that. So they're basically setting up a new Camino on this place, Mount Tantus. But I hope this is not a tie-in to Snoke. I really hope they're not trying to lead in, like, set up Snoke, because... But I think Favreau and Filoni know better than to not... than to try to write around some of that stuff. Like, I think that's what they're going to do. But you know what they could do with this? I would actually like this. What if they use this... Well, actually, before I get to that part... You know what? This also is interesting. Like, it's just highly unlikely because it was unorganized. But what if this was the plan all along? Because I remember reading years ago that the original opening scene for The Force Awakens was going to be like J.J. Abrams said this. He said it was going to start with a shot of Luke's severed hand floating through space. Like, that was the first shot of the movie. But then they changed it and they had like the classic ship as the first shot. But it almost makes me feel like this is part of the plan, but no, I think it's just coincidental because I know for a fact he and a lot of the people behind the scenes didn't really know what they were doing. But this has some interesting ramifications for the future, like for season 2 of the show and season 3 of The Mandalorian and whatever else they're going to do. The one thing I would like to see that happen with this is instead of leading to Snoke, what if they retcon it to where the Luke Skywalker we see in Last Jedi is actually the evil clone, the Luke with the two U's? I mean, that would make more sense. It would explain why he's acting like he's acting if he's the evil clone. I think more people would be happy with that than this show trying to justify how the sequels are as is right now. I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see what becomes of this. But that's it. That's a wrap on the Bad Batch Season 1. I can't believe I managed to do it, but I made 16 reviews. Well, actually, I did a few double ups, but I reviewed every episode, and I realized this one is extremely late. It's because I was doing other things, and to be honest, I almost forgot about it. Also, I apologize for this format, but I can no longer screenshot Disney Plus directly. On my old computer, I was actually able to directly take images from Disney Plus's page, but now on this one, they made it to where you can't do it. You just get a black image. So I had to find ways around it, and so I have much lower quality screenshots, so I apologize for that. I didn't really have a choice. But yeah, overall, with this first season of The Bad Batch, I think it's probably on par with some of the middle seasons of the Clone Wars. Like, I don't think it's as bad as some of the early Clone Wars. It's more closer to the middle, like season 3 and 4, stuff like that. I still think Clone Wars is better. It's, I think, way better than... Well, I don't know if it's way better than Rebels. There are things in Rebels I really enjoy, like even more so than Clone Wars. I might do a full season review, we'll have to see, but no promises. I kind of just want to take a break of doing these Star Wars reviews until, and obviously I'll come back for the Book of Boba Fett, definitely. But that's only going to be, I think, 6 or 8 episodes, so I don't have to do it for 16 weeks. So I'm looking at a list of all the episodes, and I think the best ones were the premiere, called Aftermath. Replacements I enjoyed, that was episode 3. And then we had some filler, and then it gets good again in the middle of the season with like Battle Scars and Reunion, 7 and 8. And then we have more filler. And then I think 14, 15, and 16 were all pretty good. War Mantle, Return to Camino, and Camino Lost. But unfortunately, there's just like half of this is filler. I'm hoping going forward we get less of that, and I think we will, because if you look at Clone Wars, early Clone Wars had a lot of filler, and it kind of went away as the show went on, and we started getting like 4 episode arcs back to back to back to back towards the end. So we'll have to see how the show improves. I'm very curious to know where they're going to go with this, because I don't think the Bad Batch can survive too long. Like, I don't see them surviving all the way to like the era of the Mandalorian. So they probably all got to die at some point. And I do feel like the scope of the show is a little limited compared to the Clone Wars, because like I've said before, the show is called The Bad Batch. And it's not like the Clone Wars, that title encompasses an entire era of like 3 years. So you can do tons of stuff under that umbrella. But if you just call it The Bad Batch, you're expecting them to be in every episode. So you can't branch out as much and do... It's going to be more contrived if you do that. If you try to say, hey, all these major events in the galaxy have the Bad Batch involved. That's really contrived. But overall, I enjoyed probably half of it. Maybe a little less. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll rewatch it, see what I really think about all the episodes again. Because sometimes you have a different outlook on it the second time you watch it. But that's about all for my Bad Batch series review. I guess I'll continue this next year when Season 2 is coming out, because it's already been confirmed. And I won't do any Star Wars reviews again until the Book of Boba Fett in December. So I hope you'll join me when I do those reviews as well. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.